You're leaving again. Her voice was soft, almost drowned by the ticking clock and the faint hum of rain brushing against the tall glass windows of the June mansion. The air inside felt heavy, thick, with the kind of silence that sits between two people who share everything except love. Jungkook didn't answer right away. He stood near the counter, sleeves rolled up just enough to reveal veins that spoke of power and discipline. The faint scent of his cologne, dark cedar, and something dangerous lingered in the air. His sharp gaze was fixed on the file in his hands, not her. He adjusted his tie with mechanical precision, his reflection in the glass wall looking like a ghost of the man she once hoped he could become. I have meetings. He didn't even glance at her. His tone was scared, low, as if every word cost him more patience than he had left. Don't wait for me. One swallowed, her heart tightening at how effortlessly he dismissed her presence. He was always like this, perfectly composed, unshakably cold, untouchable, the kind of man who could burn empires without blinking, yet couldn't hold his wife's gaze for more than a second. She tried to smile, even if it hurt. You barely touched your breakfast again. That made him stop just for a moment, his jaw tightened, his hand freezing over the table. She thought maybe this time he will say something kind, maybe he'll look up or smile or at least nod, but instead he exhaled sharply, grabbed his black blazer, and slipped his phone into his pocket. You don't need to. The same words, the same distance. He brushed past her, his collar ghosting over her skin as he moved toward the front door. For a second, the warmth of his shoulder brushed hers, but it felt more like a reminder of what she could never have. Wine's eyes trailed after him, her chest aching with the kind of pain that came from years of being seen but never truly noticed. On the table, two coffee mugs sat side by side, one black, one ivory. His remained untouched. Still out of habit, she whispered softly, almost to herself, "At least drink your coffee before you go." He didn't turn back, didn't answer, just tightened his grip on the doorknob and walked out into the grey morning. The sound of the door clicking shut echoed through the empty hall like a final heartbeat. Hours later, when she returned to the kitchen, she froze. His mug, the one he had ignored, was empty. He had drunk it quietly, secretly, just like every other morning. That was Jungkook Joon, her husband, the cold, untouchable Mafia king who ruled the underground with a look and silenced his enemies with a single command. His empire feared him, and yet in his mansion, his supposed home, he was a stranger. They shared a house, a name, a marriage license, but nothing that could be called love. Concern yourself with that. He never said good morning, never asked how her day was, but there was always a glass of warm milk on her bedside table. When she forgot to eat, her favorite books mysteriously appeared in her study. Her bodyguards never left her side, even when she thought she was alone. It wasn't affection, it wasn't tenderness, it was him, his own way of caring without ever admitting it. And somehow it made things worse because it was enough to make her hope, enough to make her believe that somewhere inside that ruthless heart he did feel something for her, something he refused to name. As the evening shadows stretched long across the marble floor, one sat by the window watching raindrops race round the glass. The city lights glimmered below his empire, his world. Her reflection stared back at her, lonely and tired, lips trembling with unspoken words. She whispered to herself, barely audible, "You are my husband, but you have never been mine." The words hung in the air, sinking into the silence like a confession meant for no one. Outside, thunder rolled in the distance, a quiet warning that storms don't always begin with rain. The morning after another wordless breakfast, Wine sat on the edge of the bed, a trembling hand pressed over her lower stomach. The faint sound of rain tapping against the window blended with the thunder inside her chest. It was still surreal, that small, delicate life growing inside her. She had gone to the doctor alone that morning, her fingers clutching the pregnancy report as if it were something to pushes to breathe near. The word echoed in her mind again and again: fragile, terrifying, beautiful. For the first time in months, she felt a spark of something alive. Maybe this could change everything. Maybe Jungkook would finally look at her not as a burden, not as an obligation, but as someone else. He deserves to know, she whispered to herself, brushing away the silent tears that slipped down her cheeks. He has to. That night, she wanted it to be perfect. The mansion felt different as dusk settled, dim amber lights glowing over the marble floors. The faint aroma of food filling the air, wine moved quietly through the kitchen, her hand trembling as she placed plates on the table. She had cooked his favorite spicy steak, warm bread, the exact wine he liked after long meetings. She had even lit a candle, something she hadn't done in months. She stood back, staring at the table, heart fluttering with nervous hope. He will be home soon, and this time maybe he'll stay long enough to listen. Outside, the weather seemed to share her unease. Clouds gathered over the city skyline, heavy and low. The first rumble of thunder rolled through the distance, and raindrops began to strike the window pane in rhythmic sorrow. Every few minutes, she glanced at the clock: 9:10 p.m., 9:43 p.m., 10:25 p.m., still no sign of him. When the sound of the front door finally echoed through the mansion, her heart jumped. She quickly wiped her hand on her apron and turned toward the entrance, her lips curving into a soft, nervous smile. Jungkook stepped in, soaked from the rain, his tie loosened, his expression hard. The sharp scent of gunpowder and cologne followed him in, mixing with the warmth of the room. His knuckles were bruised, his jaw tense. Wine froze, her voice caught between concern and fear. You were drenched. Were you fighting again? Jungkook's eyes flickered to her, unreadable and cold. He dropped his coat onto the couch, the sound heavy in the silence. I don't want questions right now. His tone was sharp, final. He moved past her toward the stairs, ignoring the table she had so carefully prepared. Her chest tightened, she followed a step behind, her words trembling. Wait, Jungkook, I need to tell you something. It's important. He stopped halfway up the staircase, his broad shoulders rising and falling with exhaustion. For a brief second, he turned his head slightly, just enough for her to see the frustration in his eyes. Can it wait? I have had a rough day. Wine, don't make it worse. Please just listen for a second. Wine, his voice cut through the air like a blade. Not now. The words slammed into her chest. She blinked rapidly, trying to swallow the lump rising in her throat. Her hands curled around the edge of the staircase, wailing, knuckles white. I made dinner. I waited all night. He turned, his patience finally cracking. Then you wasted your time. For a moment, neither of them moved. Only the rain outside spoke, pounding harder against the windows, as if the storm itself pitied her. Her heart shattered quietly behind her calm expression. The smile she had forced all evening finally broke. She took a slow step back, whispering almost to herself, "You always do this. You always walk away before I can even speak." He didn't reply, he simply turned and continued up the stairs, leaving her standing at the bottom, surrounded by the flickering candlelight and untouched plates of food, now going cold. Wine looked at the empty hallway, her eyes burning as she whispered to the darkness, "I just wanted to tell you that you're going to be a father." Thunder roared outside, droning her words before they could reach him. The rain hadn't stopped since that night. It poured relentlessly against the tall glass windows of the June mansion, each drop echoing the turmoil that had taken root inside her chest. Why waited again? She didn't know why. Maybe because despite everything, the coldness, the silence, the rejection, she still loved him. Or maybe because she needed to believe that somewhere inside him there was still the man who had once reached out to hold her hand during the darkest hour. The dinner from earlier had gone untouched. The candles had melted down to wax puddles. Midnight had long passed. She turned sharply. Jungkook stood in the doorway, drenched, his shirt clinging to his chest, hair soaked, eyes burning with fury. The veins in his hands stood out, his knuckles still stained with faint by someone else, maybe his own. The air around him screamed danger. Wine's heart raced, but instinct love pushed her toward him anyway. Jungkook, what happened? Are you hurt? He said nothing, tossing his keys onto the marble table with a loud clatter. He walked past her shoulders tense, breathed shallow. His usual calm was gone, replaced with something raw and cold. Don't ask questions you don't want the answers to. His voice was low, rough, the kind of tone that made even his men go silent, but Wine didn't step back. She moved closer, her trembling fingers brushing against his arm. Please talk to me. You can't keep doing this to yourself. He pulled his arm away. Wine stopped, not tonight. But she couldn't, not this time, not when her secret was pressing against her ribs, begging to be heard. I need to tell you something, it's important. He turned sharply, eyes flashing. God, can't you see I'm not in the mood for this? He flinched at the harshness in his tone, but swallowed her fear and took a shaky step forward. Just listen, please. Before she could finish, she gently wrapped her arms around his waist from behind, resting her cheek against his damp shirt. Her voice trembled. I just need you to listen just the once. For a heartbeat, he froze, her warmth against his back, the softness, the quiet heat should have melted something inside him. But instead, it only reminded him of everything he was trying to bury, the weight of his failures, the blood on his hands, the chaos he couldn't escape. He pushed her off, not roughly, but hard enough to make her stumble back. Not now, why don't you understand? You are suffocating me. The words hit her harder than the push. Her breath caught, her vision blurring as the storm outside roared in perfect sync with the one breaking inside her chest. Suffocating you, she whispered, voice shaking. All I ever do is wait for you, worry for you. Enough. His voice rose sharp and heavy. I said, leave it, Wine. I can't deal with this right now. Just leave. I don't want to see you. She stared at him speechless, unable to decide that hurt more, the words or the fact that he meant them. Her tears finally broke free, streaming silently down her face as she looked at the man she loved, the man who was supposed to protect her, not destroy her. You really don't mean that, right? But he didn't answer. His gaze was cold, empty, unreadable. Lightning flashed through the window, painting his face in white light, beautiful, distant, heartless. The thunder cracked, and so did she. She turned away, trembling, hands brushing over her stomach as if to shield the life growing inside her, the one he didn't even know existed. Fine, she whispered, voice breaking, you won't have to see me again. Before he could say another word, she walked past him, tears mixing with the rain that poured in from the half open door. The storm swallowed her figure, and within seconds she was gone, leaving nothing behind but silence and regret. Jungkook stood there, fists clenched, just having the echo of her voice still lingering in the air. For the first time in years, the house felt colder than it did. Inside, Jungkook stood frozen where she had left him, her voice still echoing in his head. The rain outside grew louder, battering against the glass walls, but the silence between the mansion was deafening. He had told her to leave, and she actually did. His chest tightened, he exhaled, running a hand through his drenched hair freezing once, twice, then slamming his fist against the marble wall. He didn't even know what he was angry at anymore, her, himself, the cues that followed him anywhere. But when he turned and saw the dining table, the untouched food, the single flickering candle, the half wilted rose he had placed beside his plate, something inside him cracked. He walked toward it slowly, his boots echoing against the marble floor. The smell of her cooking still lingered, soft, comforting, painfully domestic. Then he saw it. On the corner of the table, half hidden beneath a napkin, lay a small white stick, one he didn't recognize at first. Curious, he picked it up, his brows furrowing. Two faint pink lines stared back at him. For a second, he stopped reading. The word tilted. No. His voice broke a sound he hadn't heard from himself in years. He replayed everything in his mind, her tears, her trembling voice, her hands over her stomach. He had been trying to tell him. His throat tightened as realization crashed over him like the storm outside. Why? He ran, heart pounding, every step echoing through the empty hallways. When he flung open the mansion door, the wind and rain hit him full force. The driveway was empty, no trace of her except for footprints, slowly washing away in the mud. Wyan, his stone toward through the night, raw and desperate. No answer, only rain. Lightning illuminated the ground. That's when he saw it. Her silver pendant, the one she never took off, lay glinted near the steps, half buried in the wet soil. He bent down, fingers shaking as he picked it up. The small heart shaped charm was gold, so lifeless. Jungkook's grip tightened around it, his chest constricting painfully. The pendant trembled between his fingers as his voice cracked into the storm. Please come back. But the storm only roared louder, drowning his plea, carrying her name into the night, where she was already gone. He stood there long after rain dripping from his lashes, guilt sewing deeper with every heartbeat. The mansion behind him glowed faintly, hollow and silent, a kingdom built on power, now empty of love. And in that moment, for the first time, the cold hearted Mafia king realized what true fear felt like. Because he hadn't lost a fight, he had lost her. The storm had passed by dawn, leaving behind the scent of wet earth and the quiet hum of a city that seemed to have forgotten how to breathe. The mansion stood still, its marble floors like with rainwater, its silence heavier than ever. Jungkook hadn't slept. He had spent the entire night searching through streets, alleyways, hospitals, every dark corner his men could reach. His black shirt clung to his skin, rain mixing with sweat, guilt with fear. Every minute that passed felt like punishment. Every street he turned without finding her felt like another sin he couldn't undo. At last, just as dawn broke, one of his men called out from the edge of the old bridge road, Boss, over here. Jungkook ran, his lungs burned, his pulse wild. There, laying near the guardrail, was one soaked, shivering, barely conscious. Her dress clung to her frame, her skin pale under the faint morning light. She wasn't bleeding. He dropped to his knees beside her, brushing wet strands of hair from her face with trembling fingers. Wine, hey, look at me. His voice cracked, low and desperate. Open your eyes, please. Her lashes fluttered weakly, a faint breath leaving her lips. You found me. He nodded quickly, his thumb tracing the curve of her cheek. I'll always find you. For a moment, she smiled, faint and fragile but real. Then her hand moved, resting over her stomach as if reminding him of what mattered most. He felt it, the sharp ache of guilt twisting inside him, his jaw clenched, his voice trembling. I found out. Tears mixed with rain as he pulled her closer, wrapping his coat around her to shield her from the morning chill. He whispered over and over, voice breaking between each word. I'm sorry, I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. She didn't answer, just closed her eyes and leaned into his chest, listening to the sound of his heartbeat. For once, it wasn't cold. Days passed, wine recovery slowly in the quiet of their home, not because it was grand, but because it finally felt safe. Jungkook barely left her side. The empire could run itself. For the first time, he didn't care about the world outside those walls. He watched her sleep, brought her meals, sat through her silence without argument. He didn't demand forgiveness. He earned it in silence through care, through presence. One evening, weeks later, Wine stood by the same window where she once whispered her heartbreak. The rain had returned, but softer, this time gently cleansing. Jungkook approached quietly, his hand pushing hers. You hate the rain, don't you? She looked up at him, her eyes warm, softer than before. Not anymore. It reminds me that even storms end. He smiled faintly, the kind of smile that carried both guilt and relief. Then his hand moved down, resting over her small glowing bump. I'll never let either of you feel alone again. Wine leaned her head against his chest, listening to the same heartbeat that had once been made of ice. Outside, the storm whispered against the glass, but this time it didn't sound like sorrow, it sounded like forgiveness. Months later, the June mansion looked different. The halls no longer echoed emptiness. Laughter had found its way back in tiny, fluttering moments. The walls smelled of warmth, not distance, and every morning beside two coffee mugs, one black, one ivory, sat a small white cup with milk, waiting for the little one who would soon arrive.